Hello, my name is Kaddik. I'm the director of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom for Southeast Europe, for Bulgaria, Romania, Macedonia, and Moldova. And as you can hear from that, it's not necessarily my region that I'm in here right now, but I'm very tempted to already disagree with the last statement. I work in 4 countries, and I've been working in India and so many other places. And one thing I always hear is, yeah, that won't work here, because we're special in some way or another. Yes, and there might be certain particularities about the countries, but the basic principles of economy and of trade remain the same wherever you go. The only question is how you package it and how you sell it in the end of the day. And the question of, and I will sit down again because it will be a long day for me as well, especially when we're talking about the major reconfiguration, we're talking about change and we're talking about adaptation. And especially in the last 27 years, we have seen unprecedented change in economy, in politics. And change is ever more rapid. Information is flowing ever faster, and the perceived reality becomes ever more complex because you see so much more of the world. And just imagine the fact that mankind has been making more progress in the last 100 years than in the 100,000 years before that. Just try to let that sink in for just a second. And one more amazing fact is that the countries of the EU have had the longest period without trying to bash each other's heads in. Also something that's unprecedented so far. And one thing that enabled that was trade, because there was a French philosopher called Bastiat that said, paraphrased, if goods can't cross borders, so soldiers will. So this trade and this trade of the part of the European freedoms, the exchange of goods, people and capital, the European Union has expanded the personal economic freedom across national borders. It has enabled growth by trade. And if you look at Germany, for instance, a country that was completely in ruin, and we just talked about it on the airplane with Richard, it was completely obliterated. There was nothing left there. But we had friends from the United States that helped us, that opened their economy for our products, that helped us build our economy again. And now it's the strongest economy in Europe. You have countries like Taiwan, that when I was young, well, I have to say no, when I was your age, the only thing you could get from Taiwan were these little plastic figurines that said made in Taiwan. And now if you think of what kind of products come from Taiwan, these are computers and microchips. And this was because Taiwan opened its markets for foreign companies to come in and to start exporting. But again, this means exposure. You expose yourself to the world. And that means people have to make sense of information. And it also means that there's change happening because, well, the world because you trade, you exchange goods and services, you exchange ideas. So that means change. And the great liberal philosopher and politician and former chairman of my foundation, Lord Ralph Dahrendorf, examined that question already 20 years ago. In 1997, he looked at globalization and its social consequences. On the one hand, he sees tremendous chances and hopes for millions from the unifying power of trade and exchange. But he also predicted something that we see now, the rise of neo-regionalism that seeks to retreat into more closed environments out of fear of an increasingly complex global economic world. A mass retreat that seeks salvation in nation-states, regions, or religious communities. And it's dangerous, and the messages of populists and isolationists fall on fertile ground. Look at polls from any country. People think that their lives are getting worse. And that is simply not true. You see worldwide, with some local exceptions, unprecedented living standards, life expectancy, health, and education. In the last 50 years, world poverty has fallen more than it did in the previous 500. Still, 71% of Brits think the world is getting worse. Only 5% think it's improving. And if you ask Americans whether global poverty has remained the same, doubled, or fallen by half, only 5% are able to give the right answer. If you would let a chimpanzee randomly pick numbers, it would have a higher success rate picking the right answer for that question. And it's no wonder we are always told that the world is getting worse. There's climate change, there's war, there's terrorism, you name it. And it's accompanied, especially in the West, by a social industry that lives on this kind of bad news. And they are engaging in shadow discussion that completely divert from the real problems of the world. But the world is not getting worse, it's getting more complex. Information is getting fast and people have to make change of it. Again, mankind has made more progress in the last 100 years than in the last 100,000. Jobs that have not existed 15 years ago are now there. Jobs that have been existing for hundreds of years have vanished. And that creates fear in people. And just to close, one thing that has a very unholy role in that is the media. Because people usually made sense of looking at the media, but now media is only providing information. And the problem there is that bad information is selling better than good. So nobody cares about the 40 million airplanes that land safely each year. It's the one that doesn't that makes the news. And that, again, creates the sense of uncertainty. Last but not least, populism is one of the consequences. People being more afraid, having to make sense of more things. And it's easy for them to make others scapegoat and tell other people that they don't have to adapt. However, French and Greeks are not suffering from German austerity, they're suffering from a lack of adaptability of their countries. They're suffering of their countries not being able to adapt to a changing world. Adaptation is the key, not closing borders. The abstract idea of greatness of a nation connecting with closing borders for goods and people will hurt the countries in the end, not being able to sell their comparative advantages and using those of others. Finally, we're in an ever-connected world. Countries are not islands, even though the UK is an island. But it's not an island in the vast sea of globalization. So the key is adaptation and collaboration, not closing others out. Thank you.